Alex Reed wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crouched beside another broken drill unit. The mining tunnels of Praxo 7 were always too hot, too dusty, and too loud for comfort. He pulled out his repair kit and began working on the damaged circuitry while the massive alien workers around him continued their loud conversations in languages he barely understood. The transport ship had dropped him off here 3 weeks ago, along with a dozen other humans who were part of the first wave of Terran workers joining the galactic mining operation. Most of his fellow humans had been assigned to basic labor jobs, but Alex had hoped his engineering degree would get him something better. Instead, he found himself crawling through maintenance tunnels fixing equipment that others had broken. "Little Terran, you finish yet?" The deep voice belonged to Graal, a Gorvani foreman whose reptilian scales gleamed under the harsh mining lights. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall with thick arms that could crush steel and a tail that swept the ground behind him as he walked. "Almost done," Alex replied, not looking up from his work. He had learned quickly that making eye contact with the Gorvani was often seen as a challenge, and he had no interest in fighting creatures that outweighed him by 300 pounds. A group of Valdec workers passed by, their crystalline bodies chiming softly as they moved. Each one stood at least 7 feet tall, their transparent forms reflecting the tunnel lights in beautiful patterns. Behind them came the Krulon team, amphibious beings whose muscular builds made them perfect for the heavy lifting work in the wet sections of the mine. Alex finished repairing the drill and stood up, dusting off his maintenance uniform. He was barely 5'6", thin from years of working with delicate equipment rather than heavy machinery. Among the giants of the galactic workforce, he looked like a child playing dress-up. "You take long time for simple fix?" Graal commented, examining the repaired drill. "Maybe humans not good for real work." The other aliens in the tunnel stopped their conversations to listen. Alex had noticed this pattern over the past few weeks. Whenever someone questioned human capabilities, the entire work crew would gather to watch and listen, as if they were judging humanity itself through his performance. "The drill is working perfectly now," Alex said quietly. The problem was more complex than it looked. Someone had tried to fix it before and made it worse. A Krulon worker named Thok laughed, the sound like water bubbling in his throat. "Little Terran thinks he knows better than experienced miners. Maybe next he will teach us how to dig holes." More laughter echoed through the tunnel. Alex packed his tools and prepared to move on to the next repair job. He had a list of 12 more broken machines waiting for attention, and the day shift was only half over. "Hold on, little Terran," Graal called out. "We need to discuss your people." Alex turned around reluctantly. These discussions never went well for him. "The mining supervisors are wondering if bringing humans here was a wise decision," Graal continued. "Your people are weak, slow, and scared of everything. Yesterday, one of your humans ran away screaming when he saw a tunnel spider. Tunnel spiders are harmless creatures, smaller than my thumb. Humans are still learning about this world," Alex replied. "We will improve with experience. Will you?" A Valdec supervisor named Kesh approached the group. Her crystalline form cast rainbow patterns on the tunnel walls as she moved. The Galactic Council spent considerable resources bringing humans into the workforce. We expected beings who could contribute meaningfully to our operations. Instead, we get small creatures who break easily and fear shadows. Alex felt his face grow hot with anger, but he kept his voice steady. "Give us time to prove ourselves." "Time?" Thok the Krulon gestured with his forearms. "We gave Terrans the easiest jobs available. Simple maintenance work, basic repairs, cleaning duties. Yet your people complain constantly about working conditions, ask for special food, and need extra safety equipment for tasks that children from our worlds could handle. Our biology is different," Alex explained. "We need different environmental conditions to work safely." "Exactly the problem," Graal said, his tail sweeping impatiently. "Real workers adapt to conditions. They do not demand that conditions adapt to them. Maybe humans would be better suited as servants or companions rather than laborers. You are small enough to fit in tight spaces for cleaning. Your soft voices would be pleasant for entertainment." The suggestion drew approving nods from several aliens in the group. Alex clenched his fist but said nothing. He had heard similar suggestions before, and arguing only made things worse. "I have work to finish," he said finally. 12 more repair jobs before end of shift." "Yes, run along, little Terran," Kesh said dismissively. "Try not to break anything important." Alex walked away from the group, their laughter following him down the tunnel. He had worked in difficult environments before coming to Praxos 7, but nothing had prepared him for the constant humiliation of being treated like a pet or a child. The next repair was on a water recycling unit deeper in the mine. As Alex worked on the complex filtration system, he thought about the conversation he had overheard between two human workers the previous day. They had been discussing requesting transfer back to Earth, claiming that the galactic workforce was not ready for human participation, but Alex disagreed. The problem was not that humans could not handle the work. The problem was that the alien species did not understand human capabilities. They judged everything by size and physical strength, ignoring the qualities that actually made humans valuable workers. While fixing the recycling unit, Alex noticed something the previous repair team had missed. The water quality sensors were showing unusual readings from the deep aquifer that supplied the mining operation. The mineral content was changing in ways that suggested geological instability in the lower levels. He made notes in his repair log and decided to mention it to the supervisors during the evening briefing. This kind of environmental monitoring was exactly the type of work humans excelled at. Where the larger aliens focused on brute force extraction, humans noticed subtle patterns and details. The rest of his shift passed quickly as Alex moved from one repair job to another. Each machine he fixed worked better than it had in months, but he knew the alien workers would attribute the improvements to coincidence rather than skill. As the day shift ended and the workers headed toward the surface facilities, Alex remained behind to finish his documentation. He wanted to prepare a detailed report about the water quality readings for the supervisors. Tomorrow would bring more broken equipment, more dismissive comments, and more questions about human worthiness. But Alex was determined to prove that being small did not mean being weak, and that true value came from intelligence and dedication rather than size and strength. He did not yet know that his attention to environmental details would soon become the key to saving everyone on Praxos 7, including the giant aliens who currently treated him like an insignificant pest. The emergency lights flashed red throughout the mining facility as Alex rushed down the main corridor. Another power grid failure had shut down 3 entire sections, leaving dozens of workers trapped in the lower tunnels until backup systems could restore elevator function. 2 days had passed since Alex submitted his report about unusual geological readings, and the supervisors had filed it away without comment. Now, as he hurried toward the power distribution center, he wondered if anyone would finally listen to his warnings. "Little Terran, you come quickly," called out Nex, a Valdec technician whose crystalline form sparkled with nervous energy. "Main power coupling has failed again." "Same problem as last week." Alex followed Nex into the power center, where several alien workers stood around scratching their heads at the smoking remains of a primary distribution unit. The acrid smell of burned circuits filled the air, and Alex could hear the frustrated muttering of workers in multiple languages. "This is the 3rd failure this month," complained Vor, a Krulon engineer whose forearms gestured expressively as he spoke. "Equipment manufacturers must be selling us defective units." Alex knelt beside the destroyed coupling and began examining the damage. The burn patterns were exactly what he had expected to see, based on the power fluctuations he had been tracking for weeks. But when he had tried to explain the connection to the supervisors, they had dismissed his concerns as human nervousness. The coupling did not fail because of defective manufacturing, Alex said quietly as he worked. "The underground power grid is receiving irregular energy surges from seismic activity." "Seismic activity?" Vor laughed, his throat sacs inflating with amusement. "Little Terran thinks he understands geology now. This planet is stable. Mining surveys confirmed it before operations began." "Initial surveys can miss long-term patterns," Alex replied, installing a replacement coupling. "I have been monitoring power fluctuations, water quality changes, and microtremors for 3 weeks. Something is happening in the deep geological layers." Nex's crystalline body chimed softly as he considered Alex's words. The Valdec were known for their analytical minds, though they rarely credited humans with similar thinking abilities. "What kind of patterns do you see?" Nex asked. Alex pulled out his personal datapad, where he had been recording information that the official monitoring systems ignored. "Power surges occur in cycles of approximately 18 hours. Water mineral content shifts suggest movement in underground aquifer systems, and the microtremors follow a pattern radiating outward from the deepest mining levels. You track all this data yourself? Nex seemed surprised. Why not use official monitoring systems? Official systems are designed to detect immediate threats, Alex explained. They ignore subtle changes that build up over time, but subtle changes can become major problems if no one pays attention to them. Vor crossed his forearms skeptically. If these patterns you see are real, why do experienced geologists not notice them? Alex finished installing the new coupling and ran a diagnostic check before answering. The experienced geologists are looking for known types of threats. They expect seismic activity to follow standard patterns from tectonically active worlds, but Praxo 7 might be experiencing something unusual that does not fit their models. The power coupling came online successfully, and lights began returning throughout the facility. Alex could hear cheers from workers who had been trapped in the dark tunnels below. You fixed things well, little Terran, Nex admitted, but your theories about seismic patterns sound like human imagination. Before Alex could respond, Supervisor Kesh entered the power center with her usual commanding presence. The Valdec's crystalline form reflected the newly restored lights as she surveyed the repair work. How long was the system down? She asked. 43 minutes, Vor reported. Same type of coupling failure as previous incidents. Little Terran claims seismic activity is causing power surges. Kesh's attention focused on Alex with obvious skepticism. Seismic activity? Our geological surveys show Praxo 7 is completely stable. Initial surveys might have missed long-term patterns, Alex said, offering his datapad. I have been tracking correlations between power failures, water quality changes, and microtremors. Kesh examined the datapad briefly, then handed it back dismissively. Humans see patterns everywhere even when none exist. This is called paranoia in most species. Perhaps the stress of working alongside superior beings is affecting your mental state. The alien workers in the room chuckled at the insult. Alex felt his face flush with embarrassment and anger, but he forced himself to remain professional. The patterns are real, he said quietly, and they suggest increasing geological instability in the lower mining levels. Based on what evidence? Kesh demanded. You have been here less than a month. Our geological team has decades of experience on hundreds of worlds. You think your human intuition surpasses their scientific knowledge? I think fresh eyes sometimes notice things that familiar eyes miss, Alex replied. Fresh eyes, Kesh repeated mockingly. Or ignorant eyes that see threats where none exist. Humans evolved on a dangerous world where paranoia was necessary for survival. But Praxo 7 is not Earth. Your primitive fear responses are not needed here. More laughter from the alien workers. Alex packed his tools and prepared to leave, knowing that arguing further would only make things worse. I will continue monitoring the patterns, he said, and I will continue reporting potential problems. You do that, little Terran, Kesh said with amusement. Meanwhile, real workers will focus on actual mining operations rather than imaginary threats. As Alex walked back toward his quarters, he thought about the conversation he had overheard between human workers that morning. More of his fellow Terrans were requesting transfers back to Earth, claiming that the galactic community was not ready to accept human contributions. But Alex was not ready to give up. The patterns he had identified were real, and the geological instability was increasing. Sooner or later, something would happen that would prove his warnings had been correct. He spent the evening in his small quarters, updating his private logs with data that the official monitoring systems continued to ignore. The power grid failures were just the beginning. Water quality readings showed increasing contamination from deep mineral sources. Microtremor frequency was rising steadily, and the 18-hour cycle of disturbances was becoming more pronounced. Tomorrow would bring more repairs, more dismissive comments, and more questions about human reliability. But Alex was determined to keep tracking the patterns, even if no one wanted to listen. 3 weeks later, when the first major seismic event cracked the foundation of the mining facility and trapped him alone in the deep tunnels, Alex would finally understand what was causing the mysterious geological patterns. The ancient intelligence sleeping beneath Praxo 7 was beginning to wake up, and it was not pleased with the disturbances above. The tunnel collapsed behind Alex with a thunderous roar that shook dust from the ceiling and sent small rocks bouncing off his helmet. He pressed himself against the cave wall and waited for the rumbling to stop, listening to the sound of tons of stone settling into the passage he had just walked through. Silence followed, broken only by the steady drip of water somewhere in the darkness ahead. Alex checked his headlamp and supply pack, trying to stay calm while calculating his situation. The inspection route he had been following was now completely blocked, and his radio showed no signal this deep underground. Well, this is what you get for being right, he muttered to himself, remembering the argument with Supervisor Kesh 3 hours earlier. The power grid had experienced another major failure, this time taking out the entire eastern mining section. When Alex had suggested that the failures were following the same 18-hour pattern he had been tracking for weeks, Kesh had assigned him to inspect the deepest maintenance tunnels alone. If little Terran is so concerned about deep geological activity, perhaps he should go examine the deep tunnels personally, she had said with obvious sarcasm. Take seismic readings, check equipment, and report back with your human theories. Now Alex was trapped 2 miles underground with no way to communicate with the surface. His supply pack contained water for 3 days, emergency food rations, and a portable air recycler that would keep him breathing for about a week. Unless he found another way out, those supplies would determine how long he had to live. Alex began walking deeper into the tunnel system, following a slight air current that suggested connections to other passages. His footsteps echoed strangely in the confined space, creating sounds that seemed to bounce back from impossible distances. After 2 hours of walking, Alex discovered something that made him stop and stare. The tunnel walls were covered with markings that clearly were not natural formations. Smooth curves and intricate patterns had been carved into the stone, creating designs that seemed to flow and move in the shifting light of his headlamp. He approached one section of wall and examined the markings more closely. They were not random decorations. The patterns told a story, showing the progression of events across what appeared to be vast periods of time. Alex could see images that resembled stars, planets, and various types of creatures, all connected by flowing lines that suggested movement and change. One section showed a massive creature surrounded by smaller beings. The large figure appeared protective rather than threatening, with the smaller creatures arranged around it in positions that suggested reverence or cooperation. Below this image, Alex found patterns that looked like warning symbols, though he could not understand their specific meaning. Someone lived down here, Alex whispered, his voice echoing softly in the ancient chamber. But who? And when? He continued following the tunnel, which gradually widened into a series of connected caverns. The carved walls continued throughout the complex, creating an underground gallery that must have taken centuries to complete. Some sections showed scenes of great disasters, with smaller beings fleeing from fire and destruction. Others depicted times of peace, with different species working together under the guidance of larger protective figures. In the largest cavern, Alex found something that made his breath catch in his throat. The center of the space contained a raised platform surrounded by carved pillars, and every surface was covered with images of the same massive creature he had seen in the earlier tunnels. But these images were different. They showed the creature not as a distant protective figure, but as a living being with intelligence and personality. The carvings captured subtle expressions and gestures that suggested complex emotions and thoughts. This was not primitive art depicting a simple monster. This was sophisticated portraiture of a being that ancient artists had known personally. Alex climbed onto the platform and examined the central carving. The creature was enormous, with a body that combined reptilian and insectoid features. Its head was large and intelligent-looking, with eyes that seemed to convey both wisdom and sadness. Multiple limbs ended in what appeared to be both claws and manipulator appendages capable of delicate work. "You're the Deep Mother," Alex said aloud, remembering fragments of conversation he had overheard between alien workers. They had spoken in whispers about ancient legends, mythical creatures that supposedly lived in the deep places of various worlds. But looking at these detailed carvings, Alex realized the legends might not be mythical at all. A sound echoed through the cavern that was definitely not his own voice. Alex turned off his headlamp and listened carefully. The sound came again like breathing, but far too deep and slow for any creature he knew. Light began to glow from somewhere deeper in the cave system, not the harsh white of electric illumination, but a soft, warm radiance that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Alex followed the light down a passage he had not noticed before, one that sloped steeply downward toward the source of the mysterious glow. The passage opened into a vast underground chamber that defied Alex's understanding of the mining facility's layout. The space was huge enough to hold several city blocks with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows above. The walls glowed with gentle light that revealed more carved surfaces, but these were not ancient historical records. These carvings were active, moving and changing as Alex watched. Images flowed across the stone like living paintings, showing current events from around the galaxy. He could see mining operations, space stations, planets he recognized from navigation charts, and creatures going about their daily lives. In the center of the chamber, on a raised area surrounded by pools of luminescent water, lay the creature from the ancient carvings. The Deep Mother was real, alive, and looking directly at Alex with eyes that held the accumulated wisdom of geological ages. She was even more magnificent than the carvings had suggested. Her body stretched for nearly 200 feet with a graceful form that combined power and intelligence. Her head alone was larger than Alex's entire body, yet her expression conveyed curiosity rather than threat. "You are not like the others who dig above," her voice said, though Alex realized the words were forming inside his mind rather than reaching his ears. "You see patterns where they see only resources. You care about consequences where they see only profit." Alex found that he could respond through the same mental connection. "I tried to warn them about the geological instability. They would not listen. Because they do not understand the true nature of this world," the Deep Mother replied. "They believe Praxos 7 is simply a collection of valuable minerals waiting to be extracted. They do not realize that some things are more valuable than profit." Images flowed through the mental link, showing Alex the true history of Praxos 7. The planet had been the Deep Mother's home for millions of years, a carefully maintained ecosystem where she had raised her offspring and protected countless smaller species. The recent mining operations were disrupting systems that had been stable since before most galactic civilizations began. "Your people dig toward my nursery chambers," the Deep Mother explained. "My children sleep in the deep places, waiting for the proper time to emerge. But the mining operations create vibrations and chemical contamination that threaten their dormant state." Alex understood now why his monitoring equipment had detected increasing geological instability. The Deep Mother had been moving through underground passages, trying to assess and minimize damage to her ancient domain. "Why did you not stop the mining operations before they started?" Alex asked. "Because I hoped the surface dwellers would show wisdom and restraint," she replied sadly. "Some species learn to live in harmony with the worlds they inhabit. But most see only immediate gain, regardless of long-term consequences." The Deep Mother's massive head moved closer to Alex, studying him with intelligent eyes that reflected starlight despite being deep underground. "But you are different," she continued. "Your species is small and physically weak compared to the others. Yet you show the same protective instincts that drive my own actions. You notice threats to others even when you face ridicule for your concerns." Alex felt a strange sense of connection with the ancient creature, as if they shared something fundamental despite the vast differences in their size and origins. "I want to help," Alex said, "but I do not know how to make them listen." "Perhaps," the Deep Mother said thoughtfully, "it is time for them to understand that some warnings should not be ignored." Through the mental connection with the Deep Mother, Alex experienced memories that spanned geological ages. He saw Praxos 7 when it was a young world, covered in primitive oceans where the first complex life forms were developing. He watched as the Deep Mother guided evolution itself, protecting vulnerable species from extinction and helping others adapt to changing conditions. The experience was overwhelming. Alex found himself understanding time on a scale that human minds were not designed to comprehend. Thousands of years passed like seasons, with ice ages and warm periods cycling past while the Deep Mother maintained careful balance in the planetary ecosystem. "I have been mother and guardian to countless species." Her thoughts flowed into his mind. Some evolved beyond the need for protection and spread to other worlds. Others were content to remain here under my care. But all understood that survival required cooperation and respect for the world that sustained them. Alex saw images of civilizations that had existed on Praxos 7 millions of years ago, advanced peoples who built cities in harmony with natural systems, who developed technology that enhanced rather than destroyed their environment. They had worked with the Deep Mother rather than simply extracting resources from her world. "What happened to them?" Alex asked. "They fulfilled their potential and moved on to explore the galaxy," the Deep Mother replied. "That is the natural progression for intelligent species. They grow, they learn, They develop the wisdom to live responsibly, and then they seek new challenges among the stars. More memories flowed through the connection. Alex experienced the loneliness of the Deep Mother after her adopted civilizations departed, leaving her alone on Praxos 7 with only the dormant forms of her own offspring for company. She had spent millions of years maintaining the planetary ecosystem in hopes that someday other worthy species would arrive. When the current galactic civilizations discovered Praxos 7, I was hopeful, the Deep Mother continued. The initial survey team seemed respectful and careful. They studied the ecosystem before beginning extraction operations. I thought perhaps these new species had developed the wisdom to work in harmony with natural systems. Alex saw images of the early mining operations, which had indeed been conducted with care and restraint. Small extraction sites, careful environmental monitoring, and efforts to minimize ecological damage. But as profits increased and demand for Praxos 7's rare minerals grew, the operations had expanded and become increasingly destructive. The current mining supervisors see only immediate profit, the Deep Mother explained sadly. They expand operations without regard for long-term consequences. They ignore warning signs and dismiss concerns that might interfere with production schedules. Through the mental link, Alex felt the Deep Mother's growing distress as mining operations approached her deepest sanctuary chambers. Her offspring had been sleeping for thousands of years, waiting for conditions to be perfect for their emergence. But the vibrations and chemical contamination from the mining were threatening to wake them prematurely, before they were ready to survive. What will happen if they wake too early? Alex asked. The Deep Mother showed him images that made his blood run cold. Her offspring were apex predators in their own right, each one capable of devastating entire ecosystems if not properly guided. They would emerge confused and angry, striking out at anything they perceived as a threat. The mining facility would be destroyed within minutes, along with everyone on it. I've been trying to shield them from the disturbances, the Deep Mother explained, but my strength is not unlimited. The mining operations grow larger and more destructive each day. Soon I will no longer be able to protect my children's sleep. Alex understood now why the geological monitoring systems had detected increasing instability. The Deep Mother had been moving through deep tunnel systems, using her own body to absorb seismic energy and prevent it from reaching her offspring's chambers. But her efforts were reaching their limits. How long before they wake? Alex asked. Days, perhaps weeks, the Deep Mother replied, unless the mining operations change their patterns or cease entirely. Alex thought about the conversation he had witnessed between mining supervisors earlier that week. They were planning to begin operations in a new section called the Deep Reserve, using more powerful equipment to extract minerals from previously inaccessible areas. If they proceeded with those plans, the Deep Mother would no longer be able to protect her offspring. I have to make them understand, Alex said. There has to be a way to convince them to change their operations. The Deep Mother studied Alex with her ancient eyes, and he felt her thoughts probing his memories and motivations. She saw his frustration with being dismissed and ignored, his genuine concern for safety despite being ridiculed, and his determination to protect others even when they showed no appreciation for his efforts. You remind me of my own instincts, the Deep Mother said thoughtfully. You are small compared to the others of your species, just as your species is small compared to the other galactic civilizations. Yet you show the same fierce protectiveness that drives my own actions. I do not feel fierce, Alex admitted. I feel ignored and helpless. Fierceness is not about size or strength, the Deep Mother replied. It is about willingness to act when action is needed, regardless of personal cost. You have been trying to protect people who mock and dismiss you. You continue to report problems even when doing so brings you ridicule. That is the behavior of a true protector. The mental connection deepened, and Alex found himself sharing not just thoughts but emotions with the ancient creature. He felt her love for the countless species she had guided over the millennia, her sadness at their eventual departure, and her determination to protect those who could not protect themselves. In return, the Deep Mother experienced human memories and emotions. She saw Alex's childhood on Earth, his education in engineering, his hopes of contributing meaningfully to galactic civilization, and his frustration at being treated as inferior by species who judged worth by physical size alone. Your people are young, the Deep Mother observed, but they show promise. They have the same protective instincts that drive the most evolved civilizations. Given time and proper guidance, humans could become worthy guardians of worlds rather than mere exploiters of resources. But the mining supervisors will not give us that time, Alex pointed out. They are planning to expand operations into your deep sanctuary chambers within days. The Deep Mother was silent for several moments, her thoughts turning inward as she considered options. When she finally responded, Alex felt a new determination flowing through their mental connection. Then it is time for the surface dwellers to learn that some warnings come from wisdom rather than fear, she said. And it is time for your people to understand that true strength comes from protecting others rather than dominating them. What do you mean? Alex asked, though part of him already understood what the Deep Mother was planning. I mean that you will return to the surface as my representative, she replied. You will speak with my voice and my authority. And if the mining supervisors still refuse to listen, they will learn that there are consequences for ignoring the guardians of worlds. The Deep Mother's massive form began to glow more brightly, and Alex felt power flowing through their mental connection. It was not the power to dominate or destroy, but the power to protect and preserve. The power of a being who had spent millions of years ensuring that life could flourish on Praxo 7. I am giving you a portion of my awareness, the Deep Mother explained. You will always be able to sense the true health of this world, and you will be able to communicate with me regardless of distance. Use this gift wisely, young guardian. Alex felt the changes taking place in his mind and body. His perception of the world around him expanded dramatically. He could sense the movement of water through underground rivers, the slow shift of geological formations, the life energy of every creature on the planet, and underlying it all he could feel the sleeping presence of the Deep Mother's offspring in the deep chambers below. Go now, the Deep Mother said, using her massive claws to carefully lift Alex toward a passage that led back toward the surface. Tell them that the Guardian of Praxo 7 has awakened. Tell them that their mining operations must change, or face the consequences of disturbing forces they do not understand. As Alex began the long journey back to the surface, he carried with him the memory of ancient wisdom and the responsibility of protecting a world that had existed in harmony for millions of years. Behind him, the Deep Mother settled back onto her resting place, but he could feel through their connection that she was no longer passive. The Guardian of Praxo 7 was preparing to defend her world. Alex emerged from the emergency exit tunnel covered in dust and exhaustion, squinting against the harsh artificial lights of the mining facility's main level. 3 days had passed since the cave-in trapped him in the deep tunnels, and the rescue teams had declared him lost after the second day of unsuccessful search attempts. Little Terran is alive, called out Nex, the Valdec technician who spotted him first. Someone call medical team. He looks terrible. Within minutes, Alex found himself surrounded by alien workers and supervisors, all asking questions about his survival and escape. Medical scanners showed he was dehydrated and exhausted but otherwise unharmed. The medical staff seemed puzzled by readings that indicated unusual neural activity in his brain, but they attributed it to stress and fatigue. How did you survive 3 days without proper supplies? Asked Dr. Pex, a Krulon medical officer whose forearms worked efficiently to check Alex's vital signs. I found water sources in the deep tunnels, Alex replied, unwilling to explain the truth about his encounter with the Deep Mother. And I discovered passages that led back to the surface. Impossible, declared Chief Mining Supervisor Crom, a massive Valdec whose crystalline form reflected the medical bay lights in sharp patterns. Our geological surveys show solid rock throughout the deep levels. There are no natural passages large enough for travel. Alex looked directly at Crom, feeling the expanded awareness that came from his connection with the Deep Mother. He could sense the supervisor's thoughts, which were focused entirely on production schedules and profit margins, with no concern for worker safety or environmental consequences. The surveys were incomplete, Alex said calmly. There are extensive natural cavern systems throughout the deep levels. Some of them contain evidence of previous civilizations that lived on Praxo 7. Previous civilizations? Crom laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Little Terran has been hallucinating from stress and isolation. There is no evidence of intelligent life ever existing on this world before galactic colonization. I saw carved walls and artificial structures, Alex insisted, and I encountered the being that the older workers called the Deep Mother. Silence fell over the medical bay. The alien workers looked at each other with expressions that mixed disbelief with something that might have been fear. "You claim to have seen the Deep Mother?" asked Supervisor Kesh, who had arrived with the other senior staff. "A mythical creature from ancient legends." "She is not mythical," Alex replied. "She is real, intelligent, and she has been protecting this world for millions of years. The mining operations are threatening her offspring, who sleep in the deepest chambers beneath the facility." The silence that followed was broken by laughter from several of the alien supervisors. Chrome's crystalline body chimed with amusement as he gestured dismissively. 3 days alone in dark tunnels have damaged little Terran's mind, he declared. "Human psychology is clearly not suitable for deep underground work. Perhaps we should restrict your people to surface duties only." "The Deep Mother asked me to deliver a warning," Alex continued, ignoring the mockery. "The planned expansion into the Deep Reserve section must be cancelled. Continuing mining operations in that area will wake her offspring prematurely, and the results will be catastrophic for everyone on Praxo 7. More laughter erupted from the assembled supervisors. Even some of the medical staff seemed amused by Alex's claims. "Delusions of grandeur," diagnosed Dr. Pex, making notes on his medical scanner. "Common response to trauma and isolation. Human mind creates fantasy scenarios where subject becomes important messenger or chosen representative." "I am not delusional," Alex said firmly. "I can prove what I am saying. The geological instability I have been tracking for weeks is caused by the Deep Mother moving through deep tunnel systems. She has been trying to absorb seismic energy to prevent it from reaching her offspring's chambers." "Enough," Crom declared, his voice echoing with authority. "This conversation ends now. Little Terran clearly needs psychological treatment, not platform for sharing hallucinations." "The power grid failures follow 18-hour cycles," Alex pressed on desperately. "The water quality changes indicate deep aquifer disruption. The microtremors are increasing in frequency and intensity. All of this data supports what I'm telling you. Data that you collected with unauthorized personal equipment," Kesh pointed out coldly. "Data that contradicts readings from official monitoring systems operated by trained professionals. Official systems are designed to detect immediate threats," Alex argued. "They ignore subtle long-term patterns that build up over time." "Or perhaps," suggested Vor, the Krulon engineer who had joined the crowd, "human paranoia makes you see patterns where none exist. Your species evolved on dangerous world where imagining threats was survival advantage. But those instincts are not useful here." The assembled alien workers nodded in agreement. Alex could feel their thoughts through his enhanced awareness, and what he sensed was worse than mockery. They genuinely believed that humans were mentally unstable beings whose fears and concerns could not be trusted. "I request permission to take readings in the Deep Reserve section before expansion begins," Alex said, making one final attempt to convince them. "If my instruments detect no unusual activity, I will admit that I was wrong." "Absolutely not," Crom replied immediately. "You are clearly suffering from psychological breakdown. You will not be permitted near sensitive equipment or critical operations. Furthermore," Kesh added, "your behavior raises questions about human fitness for important work. Perhaps it was a mistake to include your species in galactic workforce." Alex felt a wave of anger and frustration flowing through his connection with the Deep Mother. The ancient being was experiencing his humiliation and rejection, and her own protective instincts were responding to the threat against him. "I am ordering immediate expansion of Deep Reserve operations," Crom announced to the gathered supervisors. "New drilling equipment arrives tomorrow. We will begin excavation ahead of schedule to make up for delays caused by recent power failures." "Sir," Nex interjected hesitantly, "perhaps we should consider little Terran's warnings. Even if his encounter with mythical creature is hallucination, his data about geological instability might be worth investigating." "Are you questioning my judgment?" Crom demanded, his crystalline form flashing with angry light. "No, sir," Nex replied quickly. "Just suggesting caution. Caution based on fantasies of traumatized human?" Crom dismissed the suggestion with a wave of his massive hand. "I think not. We proceed as planned." Alex realized that nothing he could say would change their minds. The alien supervisors had already decided that humans were unreliable beings whose concerns could be safely ignored. They would continue their destructive mining operations regardless of consequences. "Then I formally request to send warning message to Galactic Mining Authority," Alex said, playing his last card. Worker safety protocols require notification of potential geological hazards. Request denied, Crom replied. You are relieved of all duties pending psychological evaluation. Security will escort you to restricted quarters. Two Gorvani security guards stepped forward, their massive forms making Alex look like a child between them. As they prepared to lead him away, Alex made one final attempt to warn his fellow workers. When the deep reserve excavation begins tomorrow, evacuate all personnel from the lower levels, he called out. The seismic activity will increase dramatically. Lives will be in danger. Enough, Crom commanded. Remove him immediately. As the security guards escorted Alex from the medical bay, he could hear the alien supervisors discussing his case with dismissive humor. They were already planning to request that Earth recall its workers and replace them with more stable species. That evening, locked in his quarters under security surveillance, Alex felt the Deep Mother's presence growing stronger in his mind. Through their connection, he could sense her ancient anger awakening as she realized that the surface dwellers would not listen to reason. They refused to stop. Alex communicated through their mental link. Then they will learn, the Deep Mother replied, and Alex could feel the massive creature beginning to move through the deep tunnels beneath the facility. Some lessons can only be taught through direct experience. Alex pressed his face against the window of his quarters and looked down at the mining facility below. In the distance, he could see the new drilling equipment being positioned over the deep reserve section. Work lights illuminated the area as the night shift prepared for the accelerated excavation schedule. Tomorrow, the alien supervisors would discover that some warnings should never be ignored, and Alex would finally have the proof he needed to convince them that humans were not the primitive, unreliable beings they believed. But by then, it might be too late to prevent the catastrophe that was already beginning to unfold in the depths beneath Praxo 7. The drilling platform shuddered to a halt as something massive struck it from below. Chief Supervisor Crom stared at his monitoring screens in disbelief, watching as the most powerful mining equipment in the galaxy was lifted bodily from its foundation by forces that should not exist. Emergency shutdown of all deep reserve operations, he commanded, but his voice was lost in the thunderous roar emerging from the excavation site. The sound was like nothing anyone had heard before, a combination of geological collapse and something far more terrifying. Through the reinforced windows of the control tower, Crom could see creatures emerging from the depths that defied every assumption about Praxo 7's ecosystem. Each one was the size of a city building, with forms that combined reptilian strength and insectoid precision. Their movements were fluid and intelligent, not the random thrashing of primitive beasts. "Sir," called out Technician Nex, his crystalline form vibrating with fear. "All monitoring systems show massive seismic activity throughout the deep levels. Whatever we disturb down there is causing the entire underground structure to shift." "Impossible," Crom muttered, but his certainty was cracking as he watched a creature with 6 powerful limbs systematically dismantle the mining facility's most advanced equipment. Geological surveys showed no signs of large life forms. Another roar echoed across the facility as a second creature emerged from a different excavation site. This one was even larger than the first, with a head that moved with obvious intelligence as it surveyed the mining operations around it. When its gaze fixed on the control tower, Crom felt a chill of recognition. The creature was not just looking at the building. It was looking at him. "Evacuation alarm," he ordered, finally accepting that the situation was beyond his control. "All personnel to emergency transport shuttles immediately." The evacuation sirens began wailing across the facility, but they were interrupted by a sound that made every alien worker freeze in terror. From the deepest excavation site came a voice that spoke in perfect galactic standard, each word carrying the weight of geological ages. "You did not listen to my messenger." The voice belonged to something vast and ancient rising from the depths of Praxo 7. As the Deep Mother emerged from the deep reserve excavation site, her true size became apparent. The juvenile creatures that had appeared first were tiny compared to their mother, who stretched for hundreds of feet and radiated an aura of power that made the mining facility's fusion reactors look like candles. "You were warned that your mining operations threaten my children," the Deep Mother continued, her telepathic voice reaching every mind on the facility simultaneously. "You chose to ignore those warnings and accelerate your destructive activities. In the control tower, Supervisor Kesh pressed herself against the wall as the massive creature's gaze turned toward their location. Through the reinforced windows, she could see eyes that held the accumulated wisdom of millions of years, along with the protective fury of a mother whose offspring had been threatened. The little Terran spoke truth. The Deep Mother's voice declared, "He showed you data. He warned you of consequences. He requested changes to protect my children's safety. You responded with mockery and dismissal." "Sir," for the Krulin engineer called out desperately, "the emergency shuttles cannot lift off. Something is interfering with their power systems." Crom looked at his screens and saw that every piece of advanced technology in the facility was shutting down systematically. The creatures were not randomly destroying equipment. They were selectively disabling anything that could be used for escape or communication. "You judged his people as weak and unreliable," the Deep Mother continued, her mental voice carrying undertones of ancient disappointment. "You measured worth by size and strength, ignoring wisdom and protective instincts. Now you will learn what true strength means." The security barriers around Alex's quarters dissolved as the electronic locks lost power. He walked calmly through corridors filled with panicking alien workers, all of them too terrified to notice the small human moving among them. Through his connection with the Deep Mother, Alex could sense her thoughts and intentions. She was not planning to harm the facility's workers, despite their refusal to listen to warnings. Her goal was education rather than destruction. The galactic community needed to understand that some worlds were protected by guardians whose authority transcended mining rights and profit margins. Alex emerged onto the main facility platform, just as the Deep Mother's massive head lowered to ground level. The alien workers who had been fleeing toward disabled shuttles stopped and stared in stunned silence as the tiny human walked calmly toward the enormous creature. "Little Terran," called out Nex, the Valdec technician who had always treated Alex with more respect than the others.
"Stay back."
"It will kill you." But Alex continued walking until he stood directly in front of the Deep Mother's massive head. To the watching aliens, he looked impossibly small and fragile next to the ancient guardian. Yet there was no fear in his posture, no hesitation in his approach. The Deep Mother lowered her head further, bringing her enormous eyes level with Alex's position. When she spoke again, her telepathic voice was gentle rather than threatening. "This small one understands what you giants do not," she said, addressing the assembled alien workers. "True strength is not measured by size or technology. It is measured by the willingness to protect others, regardless of personal cost." Through their mental connection, Alex felt the Deep Mother sharing his memories with everyone present. The alien workers experienced his weeks of careful monitoring, his attempts to warn them about geological instability, and his genuine concern for their safety despite being ridiculed and dismissed. "He saw patterns you ignored," the Deep Mother continued. "He offered warnings you rejected. He requested changes you denied. And when your actions threatened lives, he continued trying to protect you even though you showed him no respect." Supervisor Crom stepped forward hesitantly, his crystalline form reflecting the strange light emanating from the Deep Mother's scales. "If you are real," he said carefully, "then why did you not reveal yourself before we began mining operations?" "Because wisdom cannot be forced," the Deep Mother replied. "Each species must choose whether to live in harmony with the worlds they inhabit or to exploit them without regard for consequences. I hoped your people had developed the wisdom to choose correctly. But you will allow mining operations to continue?" Kesh asked desperately. "The galactic economy depends on resources from Praxo 7. Mining will continue," the Deep Mother confirmed, causing visible relief among the supervisors. "But under new terms. This small one will serve as liaison between your operations and my guardianship. His warnings will be heeded. His recommendations will be followed. And his people will be treated with the respect due to those who possess wisdom beyond their size." Alex felt the weight of new responsibility settling on his shoulders. Through his connection with the Deep Mother, he could sense the vast network of sleeping guardians on other worlds throughout the galaxy. Each one was watching to see how the situation on Praxo 7 would be resolved. "I declare this human as kin," the Deep Mother announced, her telepathic voice carrying to every corner of the facility. "He shares the protective instincts that drive all true guardians. His species will serve as mediators between the galactic community and the ancient powers that protect worlds from exploitation." The alien workers stared in stunned silence as the massive Creature gently touched Alex with one enormous claw. Light flowed between them, visible confirmation of a bond that transcended species barriers. The mining facility will be rebuilt according to new specifications, the Deep Mother declared. Operations will proceed in harmony with planetary systems, and if future warnings are ignored, the consequences will be far more severe than what you have experienced today. As the Deep Mother and her offspring began returning to the depths, Alex found himself surrounded by alien workers who looked at him with newfound respect and wonder. The same beings who had called him Little Terran with mockery and dismissal now approached with careful deference. "How do we contact you if we need guidance?" asked Nex, speaking for the group. Alex smiled, feeling the vast presence of the Deep Mother still connected to his consciousness. Around the galaxy, other guardians were stirring from their ancient rest, and humanity was about to discover its true role in galactic civilization. "I will always be available," Alex replied, "and my people will help you learn to work with the worlds you inhabit rather than simply taking from them." For the first time since arriving on Praxos 7, Alex felt that his warnings had finally been heard. But more importantly, he knew that humanity had found its place among the stars not as servants or pets, but as protectors and mediators between civilizations and the ancient powers that guarded worlds throughout the galaxy.